how's it going, everybody? This is Rocky from WeLearnChess.com, and I was away for a few weeks. My wife's from Ecuador, so we took a trip down there, and I didn't play too much chess. I did play, I think, like a four-game series, a 15-10 series, and this guy totally wiped me out for nothing. And I'm gonna put two of those losses up sometime soon. I want to get a chance to analyze them first because they were both fried liver games, and I like to look at that as call it as black. And he played this kind of common bishop retreat back to e2 after all that Polario setup, and yeah, I didn't take advantage of it, so I'm curious to look at it for myself. So okay, anyway, I guess we have one of these Catalan setups, and I've still never looked at this. Like, what's the best way to play for black? Like, if I play this bishop check now, I guess his idea that he just wants to block with c3 and send my bishop back. I wonder if I could just close down this diagonal right away. It makes my bishop bad, but then his bishop might not be great either. I also wonder about maybe c5, but I'm not sure if that's good after d5. So maybe, I'm not really sure, but I'm just going to close this up. I actually don't really like playing these structures as black where my bishop's stuck in here, so I guess my idea will try to be to play for c5 and see what I can do here. So that's interesting. So I don't know, maybe his idea is to trade down and try to leave me with a bad bishop. I almost wonder about g takes here. I'm just trying to go crazy with like long passes, but I'm really far away from being able to do that. So at least here, just keep a normal structure. So I guess he wants to put all his pawns on dark squares and play with his good bishop. It's understandable. So I'm just gonna maybe play sort of a less sharp continuation than trying to go for something crazy. I don't think there really was anything anyway, but looks like it's just kind of solid for both sides. White a lot of times likes to stick a knight on e5, but he's made it harder for him to be able to do that. I mean, I could always trade it off, although that's my good bishop, so I'd probably want to trade with the knight. But I also want to go for like a c5 break to try and give myself more space. Also maybe e5. So maybe rook e1 and playing for e5, or even queen e7. He wants to draw. Maybe because he played such boring chess that it looks like a draw. I mean, if he has to go, I'll draw with him. I'm not a punk about that. Although play this like totally boring junk. Maybe that's why he traded his bishop right away. Actually, maybe he thought it was going to be a quick trade down game or something. Okay, well that was about the most boring game I think I've played in a long time. So not a real exciting return here. Let's see if we can get a real game going. But yeah, maybe that would be a chance to look at the Catalan opening. So maybe after this game we'll take a look. Let's play one. See if we get an interesting game. Okay. Just a regular 45 game. Let's play this Scotch Gambit if he takes. I was playing this for quite a while. Still, actually, it's surprisingly, I don't know. I want to say rich opening. It sounds like a cliche term or something to use, but there's a lot of lines, a lot of tactics. This is the main line actually, so he'll play d5. And then there's a sort of a continuation of moves that mean, it's not technically forced, but pretty much is always played. I mean, he could play knight g4, which is not as common, and then white can play queen e2. We get some interesting sequences there, and I actually have to study that again because it's been a long time. Most people don't play it, so you don't see it as often. But usually just knight e4, and then white gets his pawn back with knight takes d4, and then this knight's under attack twice. So normal move is just play the bishop here, and then interesting move here, white takes with the bishop so that he doesn't lose a tempo here, because black doesn't want to trade and then have double pawns at the end. So he's got one more piece on the board, and he keeps the bishop pair too, which is probably the bigger reason. So I think I just castle here. So there's two ways for white to play here in this game, and it's hard for both sides, I think, to play well. So one of the ideas is to push f4, f5, f6 and try to generate some attack on the king. And another way to play is to try to get this sort of dark square blockade where you try to blockade on c5 and get a nice setup. So maybe like knight to d2. And then if there's no trade, or if there is a trade, still putting a knight on b3. And then maybe like pawn on c3, bishop on e4, and just kind of trying to control these squares so that these pawns can't get mobile in the center and cause problems. I think like a more aggressive move for black was to put the bishop here on c5, so to keep some pressure here. So one thing that white can do is to push this knight a couple times. So instead of playing f4 directly, you can play it once, and then his knight, what if it drops back to g5, then you play f4, and then you got to do it with tempos both times, so his knight will go back, but it's still my move. So this is interesting here. I mean, I don't think I'm going to take that and like really strengthen the center, and I'm curious about playing c3, so that if he takes, I take, and then I do kind of have a nice blockade, although after that he could play c5, I guess. Also could just play f5 right away, and then takes, queen takes, maybe c5 right away comes, move my queen somewhere behind one of these pawns, maybe just drop it back, and then try to play for maybe even queen f3 and try to play for a quick f6. So I mean, another idea, of course, is maybe bishop e3, but he's still going to have c5 after everything. In any case, I don't think I want to take, so I'm going to try. I know people have done stuff like this against me where I just get bulldozed with these pawns, so I'm curious to see how this works. I think you can lose them very easily if you're not careful. Actually, that might have been a mistake because he can play bishop c5 now. Hold on a second. I should have looked at that. Bishop c5. Oh, I can play c3. I guess I have c3. So he's probably looking to see if he can make something work where he can pin my queen to my king or something like that, but I don't quite see how he'd be able to do that. Or maybe try to win my knight or something like that, but I don't think it works. So I guess that would be another reason to have your bishop on c5 as black, is that it would make all this slower for white. So if he plays c5 now, maybe, I don't know if I like the idea of keeping my queen on the same diagonal as the king, but it might make sense to drop it back to f2, because if I drop it back to e3, and then he can play even d4, and then he's like really advancing his center pawns, which is annoying, and it makes it hard for my knight to get out. I don't really have any development, so that's not good. Okay, so I feel like this move is gotta be wrong. Just partially because I feel like the bishop on the other diagonal is better, like attacking my king and also supporting c5. So now it's harder for him to play c5 and get these pawns moving. So I mean, I could even trade Like if I traded queen takes and then played f6, then he's either got to take with the pawn or maybe play something like g6, which probably would be really bad, or even just leave it there. But I still don't have really great development. But it does actually get rid of his bishop pair too. That's another interesting point. If I don't trade and I try to play f6 right away, I guess he could take the bishop, and then that moves my rook away from the f file. So it's kind of annoying. Although I have my queen on the right diagonal. So another idea might be to just ignore this and just develop my knight. Even knight d2 is interesting, just sort of either preventing the trade, or he would have to give up his bishop for my bishop. It also keeps my bishop on the protection of this file here for a second. So I think I'm going to try this, because the idea maybe is to get the knight to b3, where it protects sort of the b pawn for the moment, keeps control of c5. So I guess kind of having both plans here, which might be a bad thing. So I should probably decide what I want to do. It might even be interesting here to try to play something like b3 and get the bishop over. Then he might have tactics like c5 to deflect my queen away from the defense of the knight at some point. Yeah, I guess just b3. Let's see, do I have something else? I mean, even g4 looks interesting, but it's probably too weakening. So I can't play knight f4 until I play f6. But actually, f6 is interesting now, because f6, if he takes with the bishop, I mean, I guess I can't sacrifice the exchange. F6 takes. Yeah, I can't do that yet. So I'm just gonna put my node over here to b3, because it feels like a natural square to have it. If he exchanges, that's okay. Now I've got some nice control over this c5 square. My knight could even plop in there at some point. He's already wasted a couple moves with a couple of his pieces. Well, he didn't really waste moves with his bishop, because that was just the main line, but this dark square bishop, I feel like it wasted some moves. So if he trades... Okay. I didn't even get a chance to finish that. Okay. So I was going to say, what should I take back with? I don't really want to move this knight from this square, and I don't want to move my other rook away from the f-file, so that kind of solves that. Now the c5 square is really weak. So I guess I have a couple ideas here. So his queen is on my c1 rook, so I have to be careful about taking with anything. Oh, that's right, it's protected by my knight. Okay. So the first thing I think to look at is, I mean, my pawn's under attack on the f-file, and the move I wanted to play anyway before was f6, and he hasn't played f6 to try to stop that. So f6, I don't think it's such a big deal if he opens up his king now, because I might even just trade down. I mean, the pawn structure might be nice, especially if I can trade these pawns and try to go after his center pawns. But his center pawns could get strong too. So, but anyway, f6. If he takes with the pawn, I could even take with the rook, which would be interesting. But sticking a pawn there on f6 would be really annoying for him to deal with for the rest of the game, especially because I might have ideas like lifting one of the rooks. I mean, I think it's hard not to play this. I mean, it's under attack, and it does some things for me at the same time. I mean, he doesn't really have tricks like playing bishop h3, because I can protect that with my queen and protect everything at the same time. So something like, if he played like bishop h3 and I just played like queen f2, he doesn't have time to take this e pawn yet, because yeah. So let's see if I even have a better square than that. But yeah, I mean, he's gonna have to protect his bishop, because if he tries to take the pawn, then the bishop's just hanging. So, is there a better square? I mean, I don't think I have any other square to protect the d pawn. So, um, actually, I don't mind that too much. He's also got to remember that I've got. I mean, at some point, I can get this knight to like c5, or I could even play c3 and get it to d4 for a while. Though it's not as stable there. So other ideas that I have, my rook on c1 isn't really that great. So I'd like to get it to one of the other files. I mean, the e file protects the pawn temporarily. Getting it to the d file would be nice, maybe d3 and then swinging it over. If he leaves his bishop there, he's kind of in danger of me swinging a rook up with tempo. So like I'm just a couple moves away where, like, let's say he did nothing here and I played rook d1, already threatening like rook d3, which both threatens his bishop directly and threatens to put the rook just on g3, which would be terrible for him. So that's one of the reasons this f pawn's so awesome on f6. So he does have the bishop, but his dark squares are really weak, so I'm going to try to play on them. Yeah, I mean, I think this was just a wasted move with the bishop, which he's given me a lot of tempi in this game, so I should be able to do more with this position. But I'm sure I've got to be pretty precise. So let's see, what are his options here? He can't force a queen trade yet. I mean, I don't really see how he can sacrifice the bishop if that's what he's thinking about. Like, queen takes e5, just take the bishop, and king's open a little bit, but I can't imagine that he's going to get an attack out of that. He could get 2 pawns for it, like bishop takes e5, g takes h. Okay, so yeah, he wants to. I mean, if he takes the knight, like, because that's the protector of my rook. I mean, it's not like my rook's unprotected. So actually, should I move to, so d1 or e1 is the question. E1 protects the pawn in case, like, his follow-up is going to be like rook e7 or something like that. And then followed by just like rook e3. The nice thing about rook d1 is that it kind of slows down his pawns for a minute, but I don't think his pawns can really do much at this point. So let's think. Oh, d1, he gets a tempo with his bishop this way, and it might encourage him to do that. So let's stay on the dark squares. I think this is okay. So now just like if you were to play something like d4 right now, I could take with the knight, and then if he plays rook b2, oh, that might be actually kind of interesting. But I mean, I've got my queen protecting the c2 square for now, so I don't think he gets anything. Like d4 to deflect the knight. I don't even have to take it, actually. But the nice thing about that is that it keeps my rook out of e3, which I didn't think of. So let's say d4. If I do take, knight takes d4, rook takes b2. Knight takes c6, threatening on a7. But then he can take rook takes a2. Then I could put my knight. Actually, that would be terrible because I get my knight to e7 with check, which is horrendous. I actually wouldn't mind that. So he would get the A and the B pawns. I would get one of his center pawns, the C pawn. He'd have a weak pawn left. He'd have 2 weak pawns left. And he wouldn't be able to play like rook c8 to get double pressure on the c2 pawn because he'd still have one of the c pawns there. I mean, at some point he's probably going to look at just getting the bishop back, but that's like a passive way to play. So He wants to double here. Oh, I guess his idea is that if I play rook e3, he retreats his bishop. Then I play rook g3, then he can block with this. But then, can I get h? Okay, so rook e3 retreats the bishop somewhere. Maybe. I mean, he shouldn't retreat it to g4 because I'm just going to pin him. So maybe he just plays the bishop back to like a safe square like e6 where I wouldn't get any tempos with the knight. Rook g3, rook g4, takes. Yeah, that's not that great, is it? Still, though, I mean, I'm getting a tempo here, so it's hard to imagine. Do I have anything better? What if I played c3 here? Then you can play rook g4 right away. So let's do this because I get a tempo out of it and I get my rook over. Also, I have to be careful of defending. I wonder if he was actually thinking of attacking there, like just on the g2 square. Like maybe he was just thinking about attack. So I guess he gets attack and a defense out of it, which is good, right? The other thing I haven't really looked at is taking on g7 myself, just to open that line to his king. He would probably just leave that pawn there if I did that, so I don't know if that does a lot for me here. The other thing I have to be careful at here now is if he drops this bishop back, I can't... I mean, I can play rook g3 immediately, because again, this pawn on e5 is just protected because I can swing up and take the g2 pawn with my rook, so... I mean, I guess that material would be even, but it would just be not fun for him to deal with that, I guess. Okay, so... what should I do here? Should I play h3 so that he cannot play rook g4? And then I'm still threatening this idea of playing, but I want to see if I can do something with tempo. I'd like to control this square. Well, actually, I'm playing with fire here with the bishop on this, so let me think about this for a second. The other thing is I could play queen g3, and then if takes, he'd still have rook g4, which is kind of annoying. I don't want to trade down. I want to see if I can keep this going. Okay, but at the moment he doesn't have the bishop sacrifice, and now I am threatening to play rook g3, so I guess he could play g6. He probably has to. g6, which is nice because then I've got this like dark square grip around his king for the rest of the game, which is really annoying to play against. So then another idea would be to play maybe c3 on my next move, just so that he can't play d4, or it makes it harder anyway. And then my queen's protecting the b2 square, so that if I move my knight, then he can't just take it. So I think c3 makes sense, just to keep control of the position more. c3 also lets me just play knight d4, which puts immediate pressure on that pawn. So like c3, and then then if I'm able to get the knight c4, I've got some pressure on c6, and if you were to try to play c5, then I can either trade or do something else. I'm not saying I'll play knight d4 right away. I just think I also get a tempo out of this, so just there's too many reasons to play the move, I guess. Okay, so I do have to be careful about my e5 pawn. Might be interesting to play like knight c5, and then drop the knight back, so it's kind of like a long-term protector of the e5 pawn. I guess you could play rook a4. But even maybe a3, and then if he doesn't really have any tactics with d4 because I can just take it with the knight. But let's see if I can do something better. On a4, I mean, knight c5, he can just take that pawn. I don't really want to let him start taking queenside pawns for no reason. Here I get a tempo on the rook. Like, he probably thinks he's still on b2, but he forgets my queen's on this. Or actually, he can take it. So if I play like knight c4 right away, and then he takes b2, queen takes the rook, and then he takes my rook with check, actually, which is really annoying. So he'd also get a pawn there. So another interesting move might be just to... I don't really want to trade queens because I want to be able to pressure on his dark squares. But I was thinking queen f4 for the moment. But okay, so I don't want to take my rook off the e file just yet. I could drop this rook back to e2 because then I've got some extra protection on the second rank, and my queen will be free to move, plus my e pawn's still protected. If I play rook e2 and he plays d4, so just hitting my e5 pawn twice, he will get that pawn. But I'll be able to get his pawn with my knight, and my knight's automatically attacking stuff, so I guess eventually he'd get his rook over to f5, and he might win this pawn, that other pawn too. But my queen is also, this is an immediate attack on one of his pawns, so I think this is both relatively safe, and it's also putting some pressure on his position too. So like, does he want to try to go for some of these trades? He's gonna lose a couple pawns. He'll probably be down material in the end. I mean, even if he can win both my e and my f pawns, I could probably win at least two of his pawns over in the center and the other side of the board. I did not think about that. Okay. So he wins a pawn there. That's kind of annoying, to say the least. But I'm not sure if this is dangerous here. It feels a little dangerous. But okay. And now my rooks are doing the duties of protecting my pawns. Attacking c7 directly. Still got everything covered, I think. At some point he's going to lose another tempo with this bishop. If he plays rook e1, I can just take on c7. I'm protecting it twice. Stuff like d4 is kind of similar to what we talked about before, where he'd lose the d pawn in exchange for the e pawn, and also probably pressure. I've got to watch out for tactics where he tries to deflect that e rook, but I could always play like rook e to f2 and just kind of cement the defense, and also would kind of keep my f pawn around for a while, from what I can see. So, okay, so he gets this tempo here. If I play over to f2 right away, it just hangs the e pawn. So I guess I could play just back here, but I also don't want to get away from the second rank. So I've got sort of a dilemma here. Something like... But I can take the d pawn with my queen if he tries to play for d4 right away. So maybe I can play to e1 the moment. His c7 pawn's still under attack. Also, e6 is an interesting idea at some point. Though I guess that's his bishop's got that covered for the moment. Let's play. If you play something passive like rook c7, which I don't know if he'll play because he hasn't been playing passive this game. He's been playing like looking for good moves to attack and defend at the same time. But if he does play rook c8, I'm sorry, maybe something like queen a6, double attacking, and then he doesn't have time to play for d4 there, because I'll just take the rook with checks. So the rook is protected by the bishop. Actually, what am I thinking? So actually, that's not a bad move. Rook c8. I mean, it's not exactly like probably what he wants to play. So then maybe I could centralize my queen at that point, actually. Just like queen d4. That's interesting. So I guess he wants to try to deflect this knight so that he can take on b2 and try to get some tactics. So I could play like a prophylactic move like rook f2. That's starting to let him get consolidated here in the center, which is kind of annoying. But I do like having control of that second rank. So then if he plays c4, then I can just play my knight over freely, and then it's just on a great square. So I think this is okay. Okay, so now c5 is directly under attack, so you could try to play for d4, but then I just win a pawn, I think, for free. I don't like the nice thing about having these rooks on these both files in the ranks is that it's hard for him to infiltrate with the queen. Also, just attacking c7 now, so I guess he has to play c4, and if he plays c4, then I play knight d4 with tempo on his rook. My knight could potentially even get to a better square, and I'm still attacking his c7 pawn, so I don't even know if he can protect it after that. I'm not sure if I'm just winning a pawn here or not. Again, rook e8, just queen takes c7. I've also got my a pawn free now, which is interesting. So I might be able to sort of get him to back off a little bit of my position at some point. He's got 4 minutes, I've got almost 6, so I'm ahead on the clock, which is nice. It's 15:10, so it's a slow game. Definitely he's played pretty aggressively, I think, as black. Maybe a little too aggressively sometimes, where he lost a couple tempi in the beginning. But these positions are really tricky. I actually do. I think I lose a lot of games, and just because my tactics aren't good enough yet. So he's going for counterplay. So okay, just pushing the h pawn down the board. I mean, if he gets it all the way to take my g pawn, I still don't really know if that's a problem if I take it back with my rook. So if I just take his pawn here with the knight, if he then plays d4, then I might be able to play, let's see, where can I put my knight? And d7 gets a tempo on the rook. If he plays rook d8, that's a little bit annoying. Another idea is if I take with the knight here on c5, and then maybe to play e6, but that gets a little tricky, I think, with the queen potentially coming in. So I'm just deciding which pawn to take here. So if I take queen c7, he could have rook c8 as a tempo move. Maybe that gives him a little too much counterplay. So I think I'm going to take this here. think I'm okay there. It's a little shaky. These kinds of moves are always shaky here. I can always go back with the knight. I mean, it's not like the end of the world if I go back to b3 and then over to d4. So should I play knight d3? Can I get to a good square that way? I mean, now I can't take c7 because he plays rook c8. Let's see. Let's see, like rook b3. Just if he plays h3. Okay, so rook d7 gets me a tempo, I guess, but I just don't see if I really have a place. Rook d7, knight d7, rook d8. What about e6? Then he can take with the bishop. Exchange sack? No. I do want to move the knight though, because it allows my queen to get back for defense too. So, and I have to be careful about like. I'm going to play it back to b3 because I want to keep this rook out of here. Like if something like h3 and somehow like my rook's, like I take back with my rook, and then instead of like protecting his queen, if he does something like, well, he wouldn't be able to play rook b2 there right away. Okay, but anyway, now I've got sort of back to the position I had, but I'm up a pawn. His king side's weak. My king's actually obviously, you know, not exactly secure either. Now might be an interesting time to just come back and trade a pawn. The other thing too is, I mean, I could be really greedy and take c7, but that might get really messy. So maybe if like h3, maybe even just queen e3, where I'm just threatening to trade queens. And okay, yeah, so he wants to try to do this like before. And that keeps my queen out from trading queens, so that's actually pretty interesting. And if I take the c5 pawn now, then I kind of have that vulnerability I was thinking about before, where, so let's see, knight takes c5, h3, and then just knight back again would be interesting. But then he might have something crazy like bishop f3, where he's attacking my g-pawn for a third time, and I can't take it with the rook because he's got mate. But let's see, knight takes h5, h3, drop the knight back again to b3, and then if he plays the bishop back, my queen's open, but it can't get back actually. So probably I can't take that pawn. I wonder if I somehow can get a tempo on the rook here, though. Like maybe something like this, where I can try to get the queen back, maybe even to f1, just to get extra protection on the f2 square. I am up a pawn, so I mean he's got to find a way to do something here. Okay. I have to be a little bit quicker here because I'm doing that. So I guess, yeah, if he chases the knight now, he would get a pawn back. I shouldn't have allowed that counterplay. I mean, I saw what his plan was to try to get his rook active. It was good, but I didn't find the best way to counteract it. So now if c4, yeah, and rook d4 and rook takes, and then he's got this pressure on the second rank, which I don't like. What about something like, okay, so knight c5, Where would I want the knight at the end? Like, I mean, e7 is kind of logical, but I don't really know how much it's doing after the king moves. Except that maybe I can do things like moving the knight and then trying to checkmate with the queen. Okay, well, I don't know how much choice I have here. So rook takes, and then he's got sort of discoveries with the bishop, which is pretty annoying. But can I do something faster is the question. He's also got to be a little bit careful about his king. He does have an escape square on h7 because of that wild pawn push, so it actually kind of served him in the end. So should I try to push this pawn? I mean, he's got something like the knight actually here is stopping the bishop, but he's got knight bishop h3, which is really annoying to deal with. So maybe I should play queen takes here, just to get some extra protection here on this pawn. It's going to let him get this h pawn, which is annoying. Plus, he's got something like queen d2. Actually, I didn't think about queen c2. That's really annoying. Queen d2. I'd have to play something like queen e4 or something. Both of our times, I lost a lot of time there, actually. He's still got the SID of h3, yeah. So, yeah, just getting into a whole mess here. Unnecessarily, which is really a shame because I feel like I played really well here until then. Yeah, it's a shame I lost this game here at the end. Can I do anything where I have I don't even have a perpetual, which is a shame. And at the end, it's kind of funny that I lost on the dark squares, which he had no control of all game. But I guess I let the time pressure get to me here. So, yeah, I don't think there's any way to save this here, actually. Yeah, there's too much pressure here. Yeah, good game. I should so. Well, let's see here if we can see what I did wrong here, because I'm pretty sure that he was just lost. But I got relaxed there at the end. So anyway, let's check out this PGN here, and we'll go into Stockfish and open it up. Okay, and we'll turn on the engine and see. So the computer, I know the computer doesn't totally like this opening because it gives technically black a little bit of advantage, but black has to play really precisely for it. So, like already here, this was a little passive. Bishop c5 is a little better because we saw in the game how that could have come in handy with the pressure on this diagonal, and it stops some of the pawn advances or slows them down. So f5 was actually correct here, and the only move to keep an advantage. And then, yeah, I already had a winning advantage here. E6, I didn't really ever think of this. So let's see what the idea is with e6, where let's just take a look at, obviously the critical move is to like take, right? So let's just say black takes everything here. Okay, so queen e5 forks the bishops, and the king's open and won't be able to castle, so that's the advantage there. If he wasn't to take the second pawn and he just drops back, then he's getting forked here. So I guess the idea was that my king is castled, so I should have looked for ways to open up the position. I mean, my development wasn't so great, so that's why I guess I wasn't looking at it too much. But it's a good lesson, I guess. So if my king's safe and his isn't, try to open it up. Even if it costs you a pawn, there's probably going to be some opportunities afterwards. So I should have looked at those calculations. Okay, so we didn't get that in the game. And I kept a little bit of an advantage here. And it did feel like he was in trouble here this whole time. Queen h5. After what? After... Oh, h4, just to get his queen out of there. It's an interesting idea. I mean, his queen would basically on that square the entire game, so I can see why. Here I had a better move. Knight c5 right away, which I did look at because I was calculating him taking pawns, but I don't think I looked at it quite here. So what's the idea with knight c5? And just like, as usual, let's just look at the critical move where he actually takes. I was thinking about him taking the c2 pawn I take, and then he takes with check, so... Really? F takes g7. It's interesting. Let's just... I don't know, for example here. Yeah, he doesn't get the... I forgot that his rook... I mean, I never looked at f takes g7, that's what it was. Because I get this tempo move. That's kind of interesting. But, I mean, the computer wants him to just give up the queen, which is weird. I mean, no human's going to play like that, which means I had something good. So, what is the deal here where he has to take with the queen? Like, what if he just, doubles his rooks here? Let's see, what do I have here? And knight takes bishop, I didn't think about that. But I guess the idea is that you can't take this now. I've got a mate right away. So that's kind of funny. Some tactics here. So I guess having the good position with my pieces, I mean, I didn't take advantage of these kind of opportunities. So let's go back to the game here. Where I just wanted to keep his rook out of there. And I kind of have like a small advantage. Well, now it's a little bigger, but just, what did he have to play here? Rook e4 was kind of interesting. I didn't think of that at all. I don't know if he did. But I mean, if I take this, then it gives him a passed pawn, so then I've got to deal with that. And it's hard for me to get rid of that. That would have been annoying to deal with. Okay, so anyway, he drops back. And I dropped back here, so I don't know if that was... Yeah, rook e2 is the correct move, so that's kind of cool. Even giving up that pawn, which I actually had forgotten about. But, so getting the queen out of there was a bad idea, which we saw at the end. Better was getting a tempo on the rook here. And I don't think I looked for that in this position, I have to admit. I mean, I had seen the tempo on the rook at some point, but I didn't look at it here. And, yeah, that's kind of annoying. So where's he going to put his rook now? Like, if he protects the pawn and protects the rook and puts it on the square where the knight can't attack it, that seems kind of logical. But then I get his queen out of there. I mean, nobody's going to think about this, are they? Yeah, maybe, I guess, here. I mean, giving up a piece, I don't know. I don't think that my opponent would have played that, I think probably he would have looked to retreat the queen somewhere. He seemed pretty intent on keeping it in a pressuring position, so I kind of think he would play something like this. Although this is dangerous because this bishop at some point could be in trouble. Like even just if I play the king over. I mean, I guess this doesn't quite work yet. It still kind of does. But still, this computer's idea, which is weird, of just trading down. I mean, I guess it gives black some practical chances with the passer. But, and it is easy to get lazy against those passers when you're up a piece. But, queen e3 is even better here. That's interesting. So I think maybe the idea is like to play knight h2, where you get a double attack on the queen and the bishop. So like if he did nothing here, then oh well, even attacking him on the dark squares, and that's interesting. I didn't think of that before. Where if I just get his queen off the dark squares, then it's a real problem for him. So where it ended up being a problem for me. So I should have looked, like knowing that I had this grip on the dark squares, which I mentioned earlier in the game, I should have looked for ways to, not necessarily that I'm going to mate him, but just make him always have to be a passive defender of these dark squares with his queen. So, or trade queens and then probably in a good position. So that would have been interesting. But anyway, in the end, let's see if there was some better way for me to play. I took here. And basically let him in the game. I mean, I've got an advantage the entire time. It's just that, like even here, it felt like I was totally winning, and computer confirms that. But now e6, which I did look at, but I discarded it almost instantaneously, is when I should have played it. I guess I chickened out on these pawn moves at various points, but yeah, now a4 before he has a chance to double rooks and get a tempo on the rook and get this a-pawn rolling. That would have been interesting. So, okay, so I didn't do that. So I just kind of went for this passive, which keeps us decent, like enough an advantage to win. And yeah, I chickened out here. I should have just taken the pawn. I mean, I wanted to. But yeah, I mean, an h3 was the move I was worried about. But let's just see. Yeah, the computer is just amazingly bold here as usual. So the thing is, he doesn't have his rooks doubled yet in this position, and he can't. So I guess getting my queen off this this square was. I mean, he can double his rooks, but I mean, it takes him a move, and for a second I was thinking I could just take it, but obviously I can't. His rooks are double. But I mean, the other reason he can't that I'm seeing now is that yeah, he's just got this pressure here. Like if he did something now, I can just get a checkmate. But yeah, this e6 break. So this is when I play this position in the future. If I get these pawns, I'm gonna have to look more at this e6 move and like when it's a good time to play it. So okay, so in the game I played this, and I still have an advantage. It's amazing that I lost this game, really. Just goes to show you. So knight c5 was better, which I did look at, but I kind of gave up, I have to say, when I was calculating, which is maybe where I started to get into trouble, because I was just thinking that, d4 is a perfectly reasonable square. The computer agrees, but I just get into trouble really quickly here. So again, e6, just trying to crash through here and not play passive. But yeah, this is yeah, now with this move I just lost. It's amazing how you can go from winning the entire game of chess, just totally outplaying him from basically move 1, or maybe like move 5 or whatever, and then just give it up like that. But that's chess, right? You really get killed here. So I had some good ideas in the game, I think, but he kept the pressure the whole time. I mean, even though they weren't the best moves, he still had me distracted, which I think is good. In a practical game, just to try to keep your opponent distracted. But so then maybe he'll make a mistake, and eventually I did at the end. So I guess that was a good strategy by him, and maybe I'll catch him on the board again sometime. So good game to this guy, and I'll see you guys around. Hopefully, you got something out of that video.